Okay, I believe yep, we are now recording. Hello, welcome to the Student Voice Induction for 2020-21. And all these lovely pictures are stuff that we can't do this year because of coronavirus, but we are still going to have our democratic function of the Students Association well underway. So it's because it's very important to us. But here I'm going to introduce to you guys what Student Voice is, what role it plays within the Students Association, and what role you play within it. But before I do that, we're going to have Ailey Fulton, who is our this year's chair. She's going to give us some wise words from the chair. So she'll give a short introduction of who she is. Oh, yeah, do you like that picture? That took me hours to do. No, I didn't. Yeah, but anyways, so we're going to hear from Ailey. She's going to give you a nice welcome, tell you what, and maybe give some advice. So let's hear from Ailey.
Sorry, I'm laughing because that's a great picture of me there. You really
Yeah. Well,
got me in a
I
wonderful
did
light.
have a picture of you, but I was like, if it's
I look
wise words from
exactly
the
like that.
chair.
No, hi everybody. So my name's Ailey, as I said earlier, and this year I'm the chair of Student Voice. Those of you may know, and for Ailey looks different. For those of you who don't know, I was the student president last year, so it's definitely my first time with Student Voice. I've sat on Student Voice as a sabbatical officer for the past 2 years, and I also used to observe on Student Voice the year before that as well. So I've had quite a bit of time kind of experiencing what Student Voice is like and kind of getting to know the ins and outs of how it tends to work. So, in terms of like wise words, I don't know if they're exactly wise, but I said to Sarah, I had a few different kind of like tips for like get going and get more settled into the meeting, and kind of what it might be like when you first go next week. So, I'm very timely, so we'll try and stick to time as well as we can next week. I know if any of you have already read the agenda, it's quite a big one, but we're going to stick to time as much as we can, so we should be able to get through it. And I'll allow anyone to speak their mind on any matters that we've got coming up next week. So don't worry about that. But yeah, just get stuck in. I think what I regret most for when I started going to Student Voice is I would kind of sit in the back and not really say too much. I would just really kind of watch everything and take it all in, which, is a good way to learn more about Student Voice and the student parliament system at GCU. But what you really want to do is, say what's on your mind, speak your opinion, get involved with the debates that happen at Student Voice. And there can be some really good debates. There can also be some really strange debates. We have spent quite a bit of time debating things such as microwaves and nap pods and everything of the sort before. But there can also be some really well thought out debates that get people thinking from every different point of view. So get stuck in. Don't worry about, saying the wrong thing. Like if you've got a question, ask it. There's not going to be a stupid question. And we've all been in the boat before where it's our first meeting. So there will be people in the room, although the room is online now, that can help you out. And again, if you've got any questions and you want to ask me, pretty open book with helping out with that sort of thing. So just get in touch. But yeah, looking forward to it. It will be quite a while since our last Student Voice. We didn't actually get to have our fourth meeting last year because of everything going on. So it's a busy one, but it'll be a good one. If anyone has any questions, I don't know if you want to do them just now. I currently have something in my oven that I need to go and rescue, but it can wait
does
a few more minutes.
does
So if
anyone
anyone
have
has any
yep.
questions,
Does anyone have questions for Ailey? No, go get your lunch, Ailey.
no, perfect. Right.
Okay.
Good
All
luck.
right. Okay. See you later.
Right. See
Okay.
you after. Bye.
So let's go into an overview of the Students Association. Some of you guys are more knowledgeable about the Students Association than other ones, so I want to kind of make sure that we are on even footing while we go into this. So I'm going to give you a quick quick stop around the Students Association, but mostly focusing on our vision and mission. So we have a vision here at GCU Students Association that students will have an outstanding experience that will live with them forever. That's our vision that we work to. And our mission, how we realize this, is to represent and enable GCU students to enhance all aspects of their student experience. So those are our credos that we live by. We also have some values that back up the mission that we have. So our values are diversity, community, participation, fun, support, and leadership. So they're all really important values for us. Where these values come from and how they're formed is part of our strategic plan. So the strategic plan is a 5-year plan that we have. This is the last year of our current strategic plan. So it's a great time to be involved in student voice because we'll be doing our next strategic plan to set out the roadmap for the next 5 years. So this will be a great time for you as student voice because you'll be consulted on the strategic plan. You'll pass. You'll be able to pass also or debate the strategic plan also. So this year, but the ones that we're still working on, because we're still in the last year of our strategic plan, these that came out from our last year's or this strategic plan. So what we work to is belonging. It's very important to us. We want to be a place where everyone can belong, also a place where everyone can grow and thrive, and also where everyone can work together. So collaboration is really important, and where we can try new ideas. So that's our strategic plan in a nutshell. There is, because I'm going to put these slides up later also, there is a video that introduces the strategic plan, but I'm not going to play it at this moment just because really of time to make sure that we have time to go over everything. But so, in other words, we're a students association. We work for the students, by the students, and we are technically, well, we are independent from the university. We take on the critical friendship role with the university, where part of what we do is we critique and make sure that they keep students in focus in all their policies, decision making. But also, did you know that universities are required to have students associations by law? With officers who are elected in fair and democratic elections. So we're also, in this sense, a statutory body. I want to call it per se, but we're required by law for students for the universities to have a student association or a student union. Okay. Any questions? This is no. I'm going to go a little bit further. So that's the real brief overview of the Students Association, why we exist, our mission, our values. But let's look at how the student association operates. So we have this thing called that going, yeah, called oh, yes, it is going. Governance, democracy, and operation. It's the three parts of the students association and they work together, but there are separate areas. For example, our democracy, that's the area that the student voice sits in, and that student voice basically heads up along with our full-time officers and our other areas like our liberation representation groups. We also have our governance. Our governance is a trustee board because we're a charity. We're not part of the university, so we are an independent charity. And our charity is governed by the trustee board. And the trustee board also has subcommittees. And the vice chair and the chair of the board are the people who have ultimate responsibility for the Students Association governance as a charity. Then we have our operations level, and this is where the chief executive and most of the staff reside in, are in volunteer, and also our volunteers make up a great chunk of part of the operations. So things in operations are stuff such as the radio stations, the edit or magazine, but also the staff members who help to run the Students Association. So each area has their own different, but they all interact and work together to create the Students Association. But, let me go next. So, welcome. Sorry. This is a nice little diagram that kind of points out where in the how the Students Association works. This is the governance structure. It is a little bit confusing, but hopefully not too much. So if you notice that right here, there is student voice. This is the part, the student parliament, what you guys will be sitting on, and is the main democratic body of the Students Association. Within Student Voice, it has several different other areas that make up Student Voice, or technically subcommittees of Student Voice. We have SAGE, that's our Education Committee. That's where the department reps and postgraduate taught reps come together to talk about education policy and to look at what the university is doing and how we can advocate for the students' education. We also have the Equality and Diversity Committee. This is where the liberation and representation groups go to, most of them. And so this is an area where the liberation representation groups, we have 9 at the moment, talk about and share and collaborate and plan campaigns about intersectionality and about making sure that everything that the university and the Students Association does is in mind with their equality and diversity. Next, we have Ethical and Environmental Committee. So we do have a green ethos here. It's made up of our ethical and environmental officers who are co-officers this year and staff members. And we do this accreditation called Green Impact every year, and we were awarded excellent last year. So quite happy about that. We also have our executive committee. In our executive committee, that's where our full-time officers get together and talk about the things that they're working on and also collaborate on projects and campaigns. Out of executive, we also have a discipline committee and a freshers committee. Also making up part of Student Voice, we have our sports and events area, our activities and media groups. So we have the Radio Cali, the Edit, Sports Council, and Societies Council. Then there's also academic reps and events that we also run, and class reps and postgraduate department, postgraduate, and postgraduate research reps. These over here in Student Voice, this is ways that members of the university, student members, students, when I say members, I mean students basically. All students, whether they're a member of Student Voice or not, can input into the work that Student Voice does. So they can input into our policy making and also into what we campaign on. And that usually comes through this mechanism called ideas, which I will go into soon. But we also have another mechanism called referenda. So I will also cover that also. But those also go into Student Voice. So this is where members of the of any student can input into Student Voice. Student Voice, the trustee board, again, because there are the people who have ultimate governance over our charity, they do need to see what Student Voice is doing, but also we work with trustee board to see what they're also doing to make sure that it's all cohesive. And they have some committees that come off of them too. So that's the structure. So Student Voice is really kind of the thing that a lot of stuff revolves around. And it's also where people from throughout the Students Association come together to make our policies and to make our campaign decisions. Governance and operations. Again, I'm not going to play this one because I just we just don't have time, to tell you the truth. But please go have a look at this after you're done, or before we go into Student Voice on Monday. It's helpful to see. You'll also see part of this at Student Voice that talks about our student staff protocol and our equality and diversity. It wraps up what I just talked about: the governance, the democracy, and the operations, those 3-prong areas. And it also talks about stuff about like the staff student protocol and the importance of equality and diversity in our meetings. All right, so that's an old resource, but it's still useful. So I really do recommend to go see it. But I think we can just move on because we have more stuff to do in actual talking matter. So, overview of Student Voice. Let's go into the purpose of Student Voice. So Student Voice exists to represent the interests of GCU students from across all the programs at the university and also London. So there's 3 main areas that Student Voice works under. They set our policy. We also scrutinize the work of the full-time officers in the subcommittees and elect members to sit on GCU and Student Association committees. Well, the little picture didn't come up very good. Uh, yes, so you're very much encouraged to ask questions and get involved in the debates that when we talk about stuff. So I'm going to go next and pretty soon into each of these 3 areas. But as this is an overview of Student Voice, that's the purpose. Let's look at who is members of Student Voice. So on Student Voice, we have different members. We have about 50 to 60 people every year are on Student Voice. And it's chaired by a chair and a Student Voice chair. Those are elected at the fourth meeting of Student Voice for the next year. So they are students who are elected members of Student Voice. We have our representation officers. We also have our academic reps, our liberation officers, and our activity reps. Those make up the big chunks of the student voice. So if you notice, everyone, not but the general. So if you have what we call open places, so that's if you're representing your school like SHLS or SCEBI in general, then you're not considered an officer, but that's probably a good thing because you don't have to write reports. Anyways, and also our NUS delegates. So everyone else who is so representation officers, academic reps, liberation officers, and activity reps are all student voice officers and are thus accountable to student voice. I'll go into that later also. So yes, and I'm going to go into about what are some of the mechanisms for accountability and what you're expected to do. Don't worry, it's hopefully we try to keep it feasible for you as students, as people who work and who have caring responsibilities also. So one of the main areas that we do at Student Voice is we set the policy of the Students Association. And the policy also usually sometimes knocks on to the campaigns that we run at the Students Association or the direction that we want the university to go in, which we then advocate for by as the Students Association on behalf of the students. I said one of the main ways that we get these different policy mechanisms is this one called ideas. That was where any student can enter on our platform on the GCU students website. We have this function that any student can put in an idea that they think would be great to do. If 10 votes, if this is new this year, so if there are over 10 votes for that, then it comes to student voice. So any student can put into it at this ideas. It needs to get 10 votes, and then it will go to student voice. At student voice, the ideas are debated, and if approved, become our policy, our standing policy for 5 years, unless it's overturned by another idea or policy. And student voice members, that's you guys. So if there is a policy that comes through, you can suggest improvements to help change or to shape that idea before it's passed or not. So that is one of the main mechanisms that we set our policy through is by ordinary student members, ordinary students, what they want. Also, there's another way that you'll also have other aspects that will come mostly from, say, the full-time officers or from myself or people within the Students Association that has to do with constitutions, schedules, and bylaws. We are a democratic organization. We're also a charity. So we have a constitution. With that constitution, the constitution is pretty much hard baked. Then there's some schedules that are a little bit more less hard baked, but quite important to us. And then we also have our bylaws. That is basically how we operate, and those change more often than the other two. So, for example, we're going to have at the upcoming Student Voice a discussion about a Caledonian court officer. That Caledonian court officer, if that is approved, will go into our bylaws. So hence, that is how when I say that, there's other discussions besides the ideas, they're usually relation to more times than not, our bylaws. And here, this is where you're going to approve changes to our rules. Basically, that means our rules, the way we operate and what we can and can't do in a democratic function. Now, how do we do this? It's through debate. Now, we do have what we try to balance at Student Voice is it being not too a formal meeting, but yet still functioning in a formal meeting way at times. So if you were to go to something like Student Voice 20, 30 years ago, what you would find is these things called motions, called censure. Well, actually, we do have censures and stuff like that, but we try to simplify the language, but we also and try to also make it more tangible to regular students and what we mean, but we also still try to uphold some of the democratic processes that are needed to have a good debate within the chamber. So here is some guidance on how debates will work, especially when in the big part when we usually debate is over the ideas and also bylaw changes or other policy changes. So hence why I put it here. So what you need to do when you debate is you have to listen to the chair. The chair is the person who is the referee of the debate, and you can only speak when you're called on by the chair. If you need to, if you want to take a turn to have a chance to speak, so usually in the past years, there's these little cards that you see down there below. That's the way that we would in um, meetings in person. That's the way we would vote, and also that's the way you would raise, say, if you wanted to be heard by the chair. But because we're going to be digital, you need to raise your digital hand. See this little thing at the very top of your MS Teams? There's a little hand function. That's the hand. I'm going to lower my hand now. So you'll raise your digital hand and you'll be called on in order, usually, unless somebody hasn't had the chance to speak and we're wrapping up the debate. Do you remember that speaking over other members, shouting, or using bad or impolite language may lead to the chair requesting that the members retract their comments? I get a stern talking to. They can also use the mute function if the stern talking to doesn't work. And at the final, they can also ask them to leave the meeting. And that's up to the discretion of the chair. All proposals, so that's ideas, policies, or rule change, they'll have a proposer who's going to speak first. So that's the person who brings it to the floor, if you want to say, if I'm going to use these really technical terms. They're the ones who are going to come up and say, so this is what we're thinking about doing. You have this paper and blah, blah, blah. Then after the proposer gives a brief introduction to what the idea or the rule change is, then the members will have a chance to suggest improvements to that proposal. You'll also be able to speak for or against the proposal, including the agreed improvements. So usually it will go, is there anybody who would like to speak for this amendment or for anybody who would like to speak for this topic or for this idea? And somebody or a couple people can speak for. If would anybody like to speak against this idea? Again, a couple of people usually speak against. Then it goes to a vote. There's three ways. You'll have three different opportunities, three different ways you can vote. You can vote for, against, or you can also abstain from that vote. And the chair will advise if the idea, policy, or rule change has passed. So at the end, we'll usually count the votes. We'll say something like 24s, 6 against, 2 abstains. And it matters again whether it's a bylaw or whether it's a simple majority pass. Bylaws take 2/3 of the votes to pass for those who vote for or against, and other ones take simple majority. So once we figure out, I'll usually have that in my head, know what the vote count needs to be, and we'll say it passes or it does not pass. Okay. Another big function of student voice is called scrutiny. Holding officers to account. That's what scrutiny basically means. Student voice has a responsibility to scrutinize the work of the elected and appointed officers. And like I said, there's two different kind of officers I'm talking about here when I say officers. We have our full-time officers. They are members of Student Voice and report to Student Voice about what they're doing. The full-time officers will provide written reports for each Student Voice that you should read before you come to the meeting. It's part of your papers. And also, especially for their first student voice, you're going to have a chance to look at their individual and team objectives and have a chance to input on those, whether you believe those are right and could get voted on. So you have scrutiny over them. We're going to go a little bit more into more scrutiny of the full-time officers in the moment, but just so you know, the other officers of when I say holding officers account is also our student voice officers. So that's usually done by verbal or written reports from the student voice officers. Don't worry, I don't want you guys to get your heart racing yet. I'm going to go over that later, but it's also not huge. Okay, so just don't get too excited or too worried. But let's go over into the full-time officers. So full-time officers can be held accountable in a number of ways at Student Voice. They can so Student Voice for issues relating to the political work of they can be held accountable a couple different ways within the organization, i.e. the Students Association. One of the functions of Student Voice is to look at the political area of the full-time officers, how they've been doing their work and their policy and their manifesto pledges. So that's what Student Voice looks at. Are they doing what they said they're going to be doing? Have they been working on behalf of the students, for example? There's also another mechanism for the full-time officers, as we are a charity. Once I said it, as I said that for the fifth time, is there's a trustee board. So that's with issues relating to the fulfillment of a contract of employment. Our full-time officers are employed for the full year. So they also have employment contracts, and that usually goes to the trustee board. So just so you guys kind of know that what the Student Voice looks after is mainly the work, the policy work, and the politics of what the officers do and how they represent the students. So how can you do that at Student Voice? There's a couple different mechanisms. There's the motion of censure against a full-time officer, and it can be raised by any two members of Student Voice. So there's what we call the proposer and the seconder. So one person proposes, another person seconds. Or it can also be done with a petition with 100 student signatures. The motion will be heard at Student Voice, and it requires a two-third to pass. Last year we worked on this. It used to be a vote of no confidence, so it was either a yay or a nay, and if it was a nay, the officer would have been dismissed. Last year we worked on this, so there was a different whether it's because it was a bit extreme, because some stuff doesn't need that level of extreme accountability, but sometimes we do. So that's still there that you can dismiss a full-time officer within Student Voice if through Student Voice. But there's also other opportunities to either reprimand them, to reprimand with a recommendation that they have to go to some sort of support or training as a full-time officer. You can also say that they need to vacate the position, that they are no longer a full-time officer, or that no action if it's to pre if you don't think that there should be action taken on a motion of censure of a full-time officer. So if you want to know more about motions of censure, this is just a real brief overview. I can give you this it's in our bylaws, but also come and see me or talk to me or talk to someone, and I can give you the bylaws and I can help you with that and give you the process. For student voice officer accountability, so there's a couple ways that we do this for our student voice officers. So there's a verbal or written report from student voice officers. So it's going to be verbal at the first meeting of each trimester. So this trimester A, you're going to have a verbal meeting you're just about to go to on Monday. Just just get ready to briefly, usually at the first one, you introduce yourself, your role, and what you've been doing. Now, a lot of people at the very beginning, I'm like, I haven't been doing much. Have you gone to training? Great. You're getting ready to be a representative. That's important. Have you sent out an email to tell people that you're their officer or whatever? Great. That's important also. Okay, so because you're being accountable. So things like that. And the second meeting of each trimester, so that's meeting 2 and 4 of Student Voice, because we have 4 meetings a year. You'll be need to put in a written report when I send that call for papers. If you guys should have received a call for papers from me with a date that said I need papers by, I think it was last Wednesday or last Thursday. Yeah, have a date when you need to get papers to me. So, or to actually write. So with that call of papers at the second and fourth meeting only, you need to provide a written report. A lot of officers have asked if we have some sort of pro forma or some sort of a thing. We don't, because our officers are very, very varied. We have everyone from liberation officers to ethical and environmental officers to academic reps. So we do have it pretty free flowing. So what I usually give when people ask me, what do you want in the report? Same thing you would do verbally, but just written. So yeah, usually about a half page is usually a good report. If you're doing a lot more, I've seen reports up to a page. Those are very thorough, but half page is usually a good thing to shoot for. Bullet points are helpful. So a bullet point of this, and maybe then a little more about what that is, what you're doing, and also covers what you've been doing as an officer, a rep, a chair, or a manager of one of our media groups. So all officers who fail to submit a report, that's a written report, will receive an automatic caution. Okay. Also, as a student voice officer, your accountability, you need to attend student voice. However, if you're unable to attend, we totally understand that you guys have work commitments, caring commitments, and university commitments, and those come first. But you must send your apologies if you cannot come to student voice. So if you send your apologies, that's great. Don't worry about it if you can't come to student voice. If you don't send your apologies 2 times in the course of the year, so if you miss 2 meetings of student voice without apologies in the academic year, you have automatically deemed to have resigned as a member, officer, department, PGT, or PGR rep. So that does mean that you would step down and we would look for another department rep. We would open recruitment or look for, or run elections for another liberation representation officer. Like I say, it's important to send apologies. We understand that you have other stuff to do, but we also have to ensure that you're still working and still being accountable, and that you're still listening to people and you're still uh, engaged with the student voice. There's also the option of motion as a censor against any member of student voice can raise a motion of censor against any other member. So just like you can raise a motion of censor against a full-time officer, that's available to all members. You can raise a motion of censor for anyone. So things that usually come up when there is a motion of censor or motion of censure is again non-attendance at meetings. That's not just student voice. So say if you're in a subcommittee or something, or you're not submitting reports, or you're not fulfilling the remit as officer or the academic rep. And a motion of censor that goes and gets voted on the floor of student voice can decide whether an individual remains in office. But there again, we did now have not just a yay, nay, you're out or you're in. There is also the same sort of steps, same gradient as there was for the full-time officer censure. Okay, so it's not too onerous. We try not to make it too onerous, but also we need to make sure that you're accountable as representatives who are representing the students at the university. So hence why we try to do a little bit of balance. Um, Next, we'll talk about attendance. So attendance at meetings, like I said, it's now required without to do or give apologies. Attendance at meeting is desirable but not mandatory. So your studies must always come first. So if you have a class, don't go and skip it. Go to your class. Send us apologies. When you can't attend, you must let the clerk know. This is known as giving your apologies. So what does that mean? What is giving apologies? I know it's kind of a technical term. It's a lovely little term from the 1800s, it sounds like. But what it really means is when we send out a call for papers or we send out the agenda at the end, what you would do usually is do a reply, not reply all because there might be more than people, just a reply to the person who sent it and said, unfortunately, I'm not able to come to the next meeting of Student Voice. I'm giving my apologies, or just I can't come. It's nice if you let us know why, but we don't require you to let us know why. Just say, unfortunately, I can't make it to the next meeting. Done. That's an apology. Send. Okay, so it's not something that's hopefully too onerous or stuff of that sort. Again, we try to balance with the need for onerous and feasibility with your guys's also accountability. So all meetings have a required attendance of 1/3. That's called quorum. 1/3 plus one member. That's called quorum, or the meeting can't take place. So we do need to have members, or else we're not able to pass any policies. Sometimes if you don't reach quorum, you can hear about things, but we can't actually vote. So quorum is very much needed. If you don't let the clerk know, you will be marked as absent and incur an automatic caution from student voice again too. And you apologize, you're automatically deemed to have resigned from your role. Okay. The third part of student voice is that we have elections within student voice. These aren't the full-time officer elections that happen throughout the whole campus. These are elections that only happen in student voice and are only available to members of student voice. So elections at student voice. Members of student voice are eligible to stand and vote to become a representative at a number of university and student association committees. So these student reps are, for example, Senate. Senate is the highest, one of the highest decision-making bodies within the university. We have a cohort of students who go and represent students at Senate. Those students are decided about who goes to Senate is decided through an election at Student Voice. So you have to be a Student Voice member to become a senator. Also, there's the Learning and Teaching Subcommittee, for example. So if you're interested in learning and teaching, there's quite a few others. I only listed a couple. Some of the more interesting one, I think, also Senate Disciplinary. Senate Disciplinary, this is where you become the judge about people who are going through a fitness to practice or going through a withdrawal from a course. So it's interesting, and sometimes it's an interesting role. So and we have 3 students who are student disciplinary members. One student will always go to a student disciplinary, so it's not just staff deciding these decisions. And we also have, for example, within the Students Association, we have an elections committee that helps run and supports the elections. Okay, so at the first Student Voice, you've seen the papers. There is quite a few positions that are up for grabs. So think about whether you want to do one of those positions. So the elections are held by our vice chair. Our vice chair is our deputy returning officer for Student Voice elections. His name is Johnny this year. And so he will say who would like to stand for Senate. And we'll leave it the floor to see how many people want to stand for Senate. And then we'll say how many people want to stand for each one. If it's a contested election, then each member will get 1 to 2 minutes to introduce themselves, to talk about who they are and why they're running for the position. If it's an uncontested election, so if there's more spots than there are more spots than there are people who volunteer or put their hands up wanting to stand, then those members get duly elected. And it comes back to the next Student Voice to see if anybody else wants to take any of those positions. So usually it's the fourth student voice where we do most of our elections, but because the fourth student voice was canceled this year, we had some emergency elections over the summer to get a chair and vice chair and a couple senators, but now we're going to run all the elections for basically all year. So there's quite a few positions available. Have a look, have a read, think if you want to do any of them. And because usually when we'd vote, we'd almost always vote in the room. And like I have these little voting cards, and we do a single transferable vote. So that means that you would rank how you want them. So if you want this person first, this person second, this person is my third preference, you'd rank that. We're going to have to do our elections because these are multiple seat elections with a single transferable vote. It can get really, 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 really hard to count. So we're going to be doing them on our voting platform just after Student Voice. We'll open them for about 24 hours, and then we'll have the election through our Student Voice platform. Through our electronic platform, you'll vote, and then after the vote has closed and the complaints procedure has wrapped up, I can announce the winner through email. So that's how it's going to be done this year for the Student Voice elections. Previous years, and when we're in person, it's usually done by holding up card or by actually handing in paper slips. Okay. Next, so some practicalities. I'm gonna go to Student Voice. What do I do? What do I do? It's my first one. Okay, so first meeting, what I would suggest you do is we sent out the papers yesterday. Have a look at the agenda. See what's on it. Look at the previous minutes, perhaps, and also some of the papers that you think are interesting. And have a read of them. Usually we'd ask that if you could skim most of them and have a more in-depth read on the ones you're interested in. Know what's happening. Also make sure that the dates of meetings and deadlines for submission of the agenda items, which are all located also already available, but I do send out call for papers and also the agendas, but they are always there at all times. So you can see when when the end of call papers ends, for example. So there's a link to that. After the call for papers has ended, only emergency business will be accepted by the chair, and that's up to the chair whether they accept the emergency business or not. Meetings start at 5 p.m. and finishes at 7 p.m. I wanted to put a little asterisk at that 7 p.m. I would, in your social diaries, might hold to about 7:30. because oftentimes, especially in this first student voice, it's a massive one. We are going to try to get it through by 7 p.m. We're probably not going to be able to get everything read or done. So we have this thing. We'll have a vote for raising the guillotine. Nice term, I know. It's great. So, we'll vote for a guillotine. So usually around 6:50, 6:45, we go, we're not going to get through the rest in the next 15 minutes. The chair will call for raising the guillotine and they'll choose the time. So they'll say, can we raise the guillotine to 7:15, 7:30 or something like that? That goes to a vote at the student voice. And if it's approved, then we continue on till that time. I've already seen once or twice where they raise the guillotine twice. So it can keep happening. But of course, these have to be approved by student voice. So if you don't want to raise the guillotine, you can also say no. So yeah, so we will sometimes, like I say, I usually will hold in, if I, good advice is to hold into your calendar until about 7:30, especially for this first one. We do try to get through it. And if we don't get through every point and the guillotine has dropped, then that's where it leaves. We leave it there. Anything that wasn't heard at that student voice that needs approval will go to the next student voice. Members and observers are asked to use their full name. So I see most of you guys have. Great, because this is how we're going to be taking roll call or attendance is through this little mechanism on the side. You can't see it, but I have a little participant list. So I need to know who's here. Basically, we do allow observers. Observers should email me. So if somebody wants to come and observe, can have up to 10 observers. They can email me and I can give them a link. And I will also note that they're observers. Observers can view the meeting, participate in the meeting, and do almost everything else a member can do, but they can't vote. They can't stand for elections also, but they can't vote. But they can also participate in a meeting to every other level. Members should let us know in advance if you have any access requirements. We are digital this year. So if you do have any digital access requirements, please let us know in advance and we'll see if we can get something in for you. And also, if you're unsure of anything, please ask either the chair, so Ailey, or you can come see me. I can give you some advice, or you can also see the clerk, Risa. She's new this year. This will be her first student voice also. So I would probably say come see me or Ailey, as we're the ones who probably have more of, and usually in the past years, after a year or two, Risa is going to be a student voice pro and will also be able to answer questions. I am trying to keep this training under an hour, and I think I have. I know this has like been kind of just talk, 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 talk at you, but this is what we achieved. So if I put out those objectives at the very beginning slide, I think you guys might have wept and ran away. So congratulations. We're at the end and we did it within an hour. I put an hour and a half thinking that I don't want to go in over an hour and a half. I want to keep it at an hour. So what I hope you guys have walked away from this. And after the end, the next point is I'm going to take questions on any of this. So this is what, if you have any questions and you don't feel that you know fully about these objectives, please let me know and let's answer some questions. So hopefully by the end, you'll be able to describe the activities and services of the GCU Students Association. You'll know how the governance, democracy, and operations of the organization, how they interrelate and the governance structure. You'll know that students associations exist because of the Education Act. You have an overview of our mission, our values, our mission, our vision, our values, and our strategic plan, and also if that's going to be written this year. You can describe the purpose of Student Voice. You'll be able to list some of the members of Student Voice. You should know how to submit or vote on an idea. Describe how to get involved in debates and hold officers are held to account. Also, you'll be able to describe how to submit apologies for meetings and know some meeting practicalities. Do we think we met those? And is there any questions I can help answer on any of these points? Oh, okay. So the last one is to see you as student voice. This is how you can get a hold of the people that can help answer your questions or have any sort of any questions or queries, please get a hold of us. And this is where you can reach us. That's it. If there is no other questions, then I am going to let you guys go. And I hope you guys have a great Wednesday and I will see you on Monday at 5. Is there questions?
Sarah, I've got a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
It was just about, how you've got the online platform where you can submit ideas and there's the sort of like and disliking process.
Yes.
Are members of Student Voice allowed to put ideas into that platform,
Yes.
or is it purely to vote and decide upon it?
So any student, or as we say, that platform, any member, so I mean that's our full-time officers can use it. Any student at the university can use it. Any
Okay.
student, so any of the members of Student Voice can use it. Anyone can use that function. So yes,
Perfect.
you as officers are also able to put in through that function. Yes.
Okay, great, thanks.
Is there any other questions?
I have one.
Uh-huh. Yes, Alexander.
If someone wants to become a senator, what is expected by a senator? Like, what are the responsibilities, the duties, and stuff?
So in the paper that just went out there, I did give an overview. This is new this year because we have so many positions going up. I gave a little simple overview of what the responsibilities or what each area is for senators. I mean, for each of the areas up for election. For senators, you would need to attend Senate meetings. So there's about 6 a year. They used to be on Fridays, now they're on Mondays. And before the meetings, they send out papers, and these papers are then read by yourself and also the other student members, but also myself. I support the senators. So we get together usually a day before the Senate and have a review of the papers to see if there's any issues, see what we saw in the papers, that usually about an hour meeting. And then you go to Senate and you represent students at Senate. So it's not a huge responsibility, but it's a bit of responsibility. And because Senate is such a massive, it is the final say at the university about anything academic. So it's an important position. So yeah, that kind of answer your questions about what the role of a senator would be?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, no problem, Alexander. Any other questions? Excellent. Okay. Well, I will see you guys on Monday night. If you have anything you need, just get in touch with me. Email is probably the best. If you want to have a voice call, I can also drop you a link so we can have a voice call. Oh, Alexander, you have a question?
Yeah, sorry, I
No
forgot.
problem.
Sometimes on my email, when it asks me like RSVP, I try to accept, but I don't know why my email doesn't allow me to accept. If by some technical difficulties something gets messed up with my emails, but I come to the meeting, am I okay, or is
Yeah.
something okay?
You do not need to accept. You only need to not accept. Well, and also if you don't just accept, if you could also send an email to apologize, to give apologies. So you don't need to tell us if you're going to be there, but you do need to
Okay,
tell us if you're not going to be there.
that's perfect. I was
Yep.
just worried because sometimes, I was trying to tick and no, not happening, no, not happening. Okay,
Yeah. No, that's fine.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Robert, you have a question? Oh, I can't hear you, Robert. You could also type it if that's easier, but it might be one of those ones. I know your volume was working earlier. Oh, you can't hear it. I can't hear you, Robert. See.
Test.
There you go. It just came from nowhere. Okay. Yeah.
Got a question about the full-time officers.
Uh-huh.
You said that the contractor we meant.
I can barely hear you, and now you got out. Is your try again? No, I can't hear you, Robert. Mm-mm. If you want, you can email me, or we can chat about it later. But something about full-time officers. So yeah, okay. We'll go to Erica. I believe has a question.
Yes, it's just a quick one because I'm completely new to this. So I just wanted to know. I know you said that it can be a small action as sending out an email that I'm one of the student voice members now and all that. But like, what kind of action can I actually like do? Apart from like participating in debates and stuff.
So are you an officer? What is your role on Student Voice? Are you a department rep or?
No, I'm just a class rep, but it says I'm a student member for
So
student.
you don't have to put reports in.
Okay. Because
So-
obviously I'm feeling a bit shy, to apply for like any committees yet, or because I don't really know what's going
You
on.
can apply for those committees, but you don't have. But as what we call ordinary members, I don't like using that term because you're not ordinary,
Mhm.
but that's the technical term. So as ordinary members, you don't have to put in reports because you're not an officer of
Mhm.
Student Voice. So that's if you're just representing, say, your school like SCABI or SHLS, not as a department rep, but just your school in
Mhm.
general. But you're still available to run for any of the elections. So don't worry about reports if you're just an officer. I mean, not an officer, what we call ordinary members. And if you need to know if you are, I can tell you.
How do people get to the officer position then?
So the officers, those are our liberation representation officers. We had a recruitment and call out, and then small little elections that were done by each group to elect our liberation representation officers. And then also for our department reps, we have a recruitment for our department reps. It's
yeah.
already finished for this year, but if you're interested next year, especially just usually at the very beginning or during the summer, is when we recruit for our department reps, who are the ones who go to school boards and also the student voice.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there any other questions?
Yes.
Oh, I hear a little bit, Mark. Robert.
That's fine. Either or. You said about the officers being contracted. Does that mean you've got to sign something?
Only the full-time officers. So our full-time officers, they're elected in March of each year, and any student can run to become a full-time officer, but they're elected by an all-campus vote. You guys will hear about this. And because they become full-time officers, they either need to do it at the end of their year and they take a year, or they take a year out of their studies, what's called a sabbatical. And they also get paid. Because they get paid, have to sign a contract of employment for that term for 1 year. So hence there are some areas that, like say the full-time officers, they don't only have the political responsibility of student voice, they also have to make sure they meet their employment contracts. In other words, they come to work and stuff of that sort. So that's one of the ones. So like say if when we say there's two different areas that the full-time officers have accountability, one through the policy and political, i.e. student voice, and the other one through the employment and stuff. So if they contravene an employment policy, that goes to trustee board, not to student voice, if that makes sense. That's what we're saying there. And that's only for FTOs, full-time officers. Okay, I think we have a. Oh, yes, nice, Dylan. I did see Dylan is joining as an NUS member, and I saw your manifesto. I did note that you were used to be. Oh, I didn't know it was City of Glasgow, so it would be nice to see how it's different from City of Glasgow. Be great to talk to you. Okay. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hold on, my screen's not big, but yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just wondering about, in terms of the papers, could you just repeat, so do we get them through email? Do we access them? And how do we like send
So
them back to, are we meant to send them back to you?
No, so for the call for papers, what we call a call for papers, I'll send an email out. And it'll be sent to usually if you're an officer, to your officer account. Usually for the call papers, you might get it to both your at Caledonian AC email and also your officer account. But at that point, you have usually that's done a week before you can submit your paper. Then just by replying, the person who sent it is usually also the person who you reply to. So you say, here's my officer report. You can even do it in the email, or we can just cut and paste from the email, or you can send it in a Word document attached to the email. And then what we do is we take time and we get them all compiled into one longer report. And then we send a thing that the agenda and papers are ready. And that just happened yesterday, for example. Agenda and papers are ready. There's a link that if you go into that link onto our website, that's where you're going to have all the papers. Because if we sent them out, sometimes, not all the time, they could be quite thick. So and also because we want to have accountability and transparency, so they're actually available to any member to see what's going on our agenda and the papers going through Student Voice. So they're on this, there'll be a link that goes to where you can find the papers on our website. Does that make sense? Is that what your question was?
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to wrap my head. So we just reply back to you saying that what we received that. I'm sorry, I'm getting really confused.
You don't have to reply that you received it. You just need to reply if we need your paper. So at the second
Okay.
and fourth meeting, you'll need to send in your report because I know you're a department rep.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, so that's what, and
Okay.
then also if you're not able to attend to either of those emails that go out, whether it's call for papers, if you already know that far in advance that you're not going to be able to attend, you can respond, I'm not able to attend, or also you can also respond to the agenda and papers are ready email, or
Okay.
you could just also just email Student Voice and let me know too.
That's fine. In terms of my department rep email, I'm still having issues with that. I haven't been able to access that yet.
That's why we usually send it to both.
Okay,
I know
fine.
that. It usually happens every year, but I'll talk to you afterwards and I'll see if I can get it reset again. But yes, but do you have an eye on your department? We know that there is a lot of times issues. So that's why we send it to both. Yes, I have a question from, sorry, I don't see your name. What's your name?
It's
Amanda. Oh, Amanda. Yes.
I just wanted to pick up on the point that you were talking about transparency there. And this might seem like a silly question, but again, given that I've not really done this before, then I just wanted to check with you. In terms of transparency with sharing the papers with your groups or your representative student body, how appropriate is that? Like, because I was
all papers are public.
Right. Okay. So
you are more than welcome to share.
Okay,
yes.
so I don't have to actually send it around the group. It will already be available. I can just point people in that direction, kind of thing.
Yeah, usually that's the best in a way to say, oh, or you can even, like, if you can in your email, put a link to the paper. That's maybe just like copy and paste from the thing into the link. But yeah, all papers are public, and do use them to get feedback from the people you represent. Definitely.
Brilliant. Okay, that's good. I thought that was dead obvious, but I just wanted to make sure, just in case I
that's
was
fine.
compromising some rule that I don't know about. Okay,
trustee board, and it's good to ask because if you're on trustee board, there's open and closed business. Open business can go anywhere. Closed business is just for trustee. So, but because this is the democratic function, it's open for everyone.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Is there any other questions? Yes, Alexander.
Sorry, still me.
No, it's great. This is great because I know
about transparency and sharing information with others. Like when I went to the board meeting last time, I got some interesting information that I would like to share with my class rep when I have my first meeting with them. Can I share information from the board meeting with my class reps or not?
You should be able to, yes, especially with your class reps, yes, because that you have to do that in order to be, well, you don't have to, but in order to represent students, you need to let them know what you're working on or what you need consultation on. So yeah, you can.
Yeah,
and board meetings also, if you want to know, are also they're kind of hidden on the websites, but they also get publicized after usually about 6 months, just because of the committee structures of the university. So yes.
Okay, it's just because some information about like student target, international target and stuff. So like, can I share that? So that's why I was kind of, preoccupied. It might be not appropriate.
No, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That's why we have student members.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is there any other questions? Excellent. All right. Well, I will see you on Monday. I hope you guys all have a good day and go enjoy a cup of tea and some food, probably. I will say goodbye.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Bye.